Hello YouTube, welcome back to the channel. This is Mahadeva the Thunder Wizard. I can't believe I am making this video. This is not something I would have ever thought I would be talking about. The question that I am going to explore today is the solar flash the biblical rapture? And the question is, how will people shift from 3D to 5D? Is it going to be an instantaneous event? I'm going to talk to you about some research I've done, as well as my own personal downloads that I've received from higher dimensional beings, which you can decide whether or not it's accurate. I haven't made any firm decisions about anything, but I do believe it's worthwhile to discuss these issues. So one thing I learned 2021. In 2021, when I had my red pill moment, I'm not going to say when I became awakened. People use that. I don't like that because that means that you've achieved something. You're at the, I'm constantly learning and growing. I don't believe that there is such a thing as achieving, a status of being awakened. I don't even think the deities have accomplished that. But when I came to my red pill moment, when I became aware that many of my understandings about our world, our reality, our political system, when I became aware that many of my understandings were completely false, and that many of the beliefs that people had that I dismissed vociferously for years, I came to realize that they were at least partly, if not completely, accurate. So my view of the world is completely different than it was just 2.5 years ago. So what I learned is that, as I said, which a lot of people don't like, but that's okay. I said, I was wrong for the right reasons, and a lot of people who were right for the wrong reasons, and the idea is to become right for the right reasons, and that is my goal. I want to do that. So that means that I have to be willing to look at things that I personally don't agree with, and I have to be willing to kind of deconflate, because what I'm finding out is that people who were right for the wrong reasons, bottom line is they were right about many things. They were right about the pandemic. They were right about certain medical procedures. And they were right about the political environment. And I hadn't made any decision about those medical procedures because I hadn't seen enough evidence or anything to tell me otherwise. But I had made some conclusions about, what the world was. The world was definitely not perfect. People were politicians usually were corrupt, but I never once envisioned that we lived in a world that was run by what we would now call the cabal elite. I mean, it's just a fact. And I think about that now because I have people that I know that if you start talking about the United States government being run by unacknowledged deep state interests, they scoff and they laugh and they say things, and they make jokes. There's one person in my life that makes jokes about, so where are they meeting on Skull Island to, blah, 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 as though, the joke is supposed to be that's just so ridiculous that there's this group of evil geniuses running the world, that's just, but then if you say to those same people, so then how would you describe communist Russia? How would you describe Pol Pot in Southeast Asia? How would you describe North Korea? Are you telling me that in North Korea it's literally impossible for a small group of very powerful people to completely control everything in that government? Are you telling me that during Soviet Russia it was completely impossible for a small group of very powerful people to control everything? I mean, that's where the name state-run television came from. Because in Soviet Russia there was state-run television, and nothing else. North Korea, you have state-run television. So why is it okay for other countries to have that happen, but it's impossible to happen in the United States? Why is that somehow impossible? Why is it impossible? The world is a closed unit. The earth is a closed unit. Why is it impossible? So again, these are just assumptions that people worship. So I don't worship my assumptions. I'm willing to look at them. So that means that I have to be willing to look at things that I had previously discarded. Let me be clear. I am not a Christian. I was a Christian. Anybody wants to come on here? I know Christians are going to come on here just because I put the word rapture. And please don't save your breath. Don't tell me you're going to pray for me, or that you want, that if I just pray to Jesus, I'll be saved. I was a Christian for years. I was a minister. I read the New Testament in Greek. In fact, I had a copy of the Greek New Testament, the original language of the New Testament. I had it, and when Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons would come to the door, and they would invariably say, in the original Greek it says, and I would say, hang on a second. And I would go get my Greek New Testament, and I would open it up, and I would say, show me where that is. And of course, they didn't have any clue because they didn't know Greek. And I would say, here's what the real Greek says, because when you hear Mormons do this, and they say in the original Greek, they're wrong. They take a different Greek word and throw it in there, and I know that because I've seen the original text. So there's nothing you can tell me about Christianity. I know as much as anybody possibly can. I lived it. I was a scholar, for Christ's sake, in it. And so I'm very familiar with the concept of the rapture. And of course, when I walked away from Christianity, I walked away from everything. Because like the born-again Christians, I completely agree with them in this regard. When it comes to accepting the Bible, you either accept it or reject it. Either it's all correct or none of it is correct. I agree with that in essence, because the Bible was written to be a definitive book. It was meant to be literal and historic. It was never meant, as a lot of you might want. A lot of you might want to believe that the Bible was meant to be symbolic, and people take it, and they take what they want and they throw out the rest, and they turn Jesus into something he was never intended to be, which, again, Jesus never existed. That is a fact. The man Jesus of Nazareth never existed. It's an impossibility. You can look on my channel. And if you want, you can read my book, Odin Says Jesus Was a Coward, and I go and I prove to you historically where monotheism came from, why monotheism is a political invention. It was never, ever an original religion. There was no such thing as that kind of monotheism that Abrahamic mythology wants to present. It never existed until 385 BC, when the Jews came back from being in captivity in Babylon. And they brought with them a made-up religion and a made-up history for themselves. It's also a fact that the children of Israel were never held captive in Egypt, and they never escaped. The children of Israel are none other than the Canaanites. So whenever you read in the Bible about Joshua and Moses fighting against the evil Canaanites and taking that land away from them, the Canaanites are none other than the Israelites. The Israelites are the descendants, the direct descendants of the Canaanites. The Hebrew language is the direct descendant of the Canaanite language. The Hebrew script is a direct descendant of the Canaanite script. The gods Baal, for example, when you read the songs and many of the, the Lord this and all that, it's literally taken from things written about Baal and rewritten and put in, Jehovah's name in there. So the whole thing is a complete sham. It is part of in fact, it is if you want to know, the monotheist religious revolution that was a political move. And you know that because Jehovah is extremely political. He says, I am the God of Abraham, the Israelites. I am the God of Israel. If you worship any of the foreign gods, I will punish you. That works very well with somebody who wants to control, politically and racially control a people. Because until then, in the Levant area, people shared their gods with other polytheists. And it was, it was like Hinduism today. You can worship a bunch of different gods, different sects and all of that under one umbrella. But these guys wanted control, and they wrote the book. They wrote the book that the Romans copied. And the Romans, by the way, the Roman Empire never fell. We are still under the Roman Empire. It's still seeking to expand and do what it's always done, rule the world. So, now that you know I'm not a Christian, don't bother trying to talk me into it, because I will destroy you with facts and understanding. However, as I learned 2.5 years ago, people can be right for the wrong reason. So the Bible has a few verses. There's this whole belief in American born-again Christianity. You don't find it anywhere else. You find it in America. They're the ones that made it up. But, to their credit, if you want to use that word, American fundamentalist Christians are have been, very good at studying the Bible, taking it literally, and they will. If there's something that the Bible literally says, they will change all their beliefs because that is their source material. That is what tells them what to believe. And they will break with thousands of years of tradition if the Bible says something different. To their credit, at least they're consistent. Unlike the Catholics, unlike the Orthodox, they've got all kinds of weird mishmash of stuff in there. The born-again Christians in America, they're at least consistent. They take that literalist false history and they completely, totally turn their religion about what they read on there. Now, obviously I don't do that. But as I said, people can be right for the wrong reasons. So what I've learned with the people who were right for the wrong reasons, that I thought were wrong for many years, about the deep state, about the one world government thing, about the corporatocracy that's trying to run the world, the technocracy that's trying to run the world, that is running the world. When it became clear that they'd been right, that was true, I had to accept the fact that was facing me. So let me go through some of the beliefs. I guess before that I should share my experience. This is why I'm looking at it. As you can tell, I'm not comfortable with the idea. I am not comfortable with the idea that the solar flash is the rapture. It's not a comfortable thought. So why am I even addressing it? If you're new to my channel, you can see I've got books here. By the way, all these links are here for you, and I'll push those links at the end of the video. But if you've read my books, and if you've been on my channel, you know what has happened to me. In June of 2022, I did not believe that aliens or extraterrestrials existed. I thought it was impossible. I didn't didn't disbelieve in the idea that there could be intelligent life and civilizations in this infinite universe. It was just obvious that wherever they were so far away, they would have to travel faster than the speed of light, which up until that point I believed was impossible. And even if they're hundreds of light years or thousands of light years away, they're going to die on the trek over here just to check us out. So I said they may exist, but they're never going to get to Earth. And then I saw Dr. Stephen Greer's movie, The Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, CE5. And he has a very simple way for humans to make contact with extraterrestrials. I watched that movie and I saw what was going on in that movie, and if any of it was true, I had to find out. I had to experience it. Because what I saw was people, human beings, interacting with extremely powerful higher dimensional beings, and they were having incredibly powerful spiritual experiences, and it was what I'd been waiting for. I'd gotten as far as I can go in all of the human meditative practices, and to see that there was a possibility to go into higher dimensions. I said I have to find out if these beings exist, because if they do, I want to learn from them. I want them to teach me their powerful shamanic abilities. So I did CE5, and it took me, I was successful the very first time. If you go watch my video, How I Became an Extraterrestrial, please learn how to search within the channel. It's on my channel, How I Became an Extraterrestrial. And in that video, I give you video and audio proof that I did, in fact, the very first time I did CE5, I made contact. But I was too entrenched in the third dimension, and I didn't see it. Even though a being spoke to me, I didn't hear it. Even though literally an orb was flying over my body as I was lying there, I didn't see it. Video proves it, I didn't see it. So it took until the third time when a very powerful, extremely powerful being came as a result of me doing the CE5 protocols, and that started an interaction with higher dimensional beings that has not stopped till this day. And I went through a tremendous transformation, and I almost lost my mind, because I was introduced to a reality, higher dimensional reality, that I couldn't have comprehended in my third dimensional brain. So I can't say anything is possible or impossible. I can tell you that Jehovah doesn't exist. I can tell you that Jesus of Nazareth never existed. I can tell you that human beings do not need to be saved, and that the whole idea of a perfect deity sacrificing himself to the rage and the homicidal rage of one deity, because you're not perfect, that's just basic psychology right there. That's a psychopathic narcissist, and Jesus is the ultimate codependent. It is about as toxic as you can get, and that is why the elites have always been Christians, in case you want to know. To this day, that core of elites who are running the world, they have a Christian apocalyptic view of the world, and they have said they are going to bring the apocalypse, and they're doing it because they want the second coming of Jesus. So I recommend all of you to drop Christianity as a religion. However, that doesn't mean that even mistaken Christians can't have accurate, intuitive understandings. Most of the people, 2.5 years ago, that believed the things I now believe, a lot of them are born again Christians. A lot of them are flat earthers. The earth isn't flat, and I'm not a Christian, but it doesn't change the fact that NASA's lying to you, that science is lying to you, that the government is lying to you, that education is lying to you, that that doesn't change. We're in agreement on that. The other stuff, that's their unresolved psychological issues, and that's the problem. So I was told by these higher dimensional beings that there was going to be what people call the solar flash. They told me, they showed me in a symbolic, very powerful symbolic dream, they showed me that there was going to be something that happened in the sky that everybody on the earth was going to see, that it was going to be a powerful spiritual experience that everybody would believe was the second coming of Christ. And then immediately the awareness would hit them that it was, that their religion actually was wrong, and this was something much larger and much different than that. But that was the gateway. The belief that Jesus was coming in the clouds was actually the gateway that opens them up to something even more. So I saw that, and I talked about it, and then I asked them later in my meditations when I was communicating with them, and I said, what is this event going to be? Because I could only imagine fleets of spaceships with light beings showing up and, doing whatever they would do. That was the only thing I could possibly imagine would wake people out of this third dimensional slumber. And when I asked them, what is this event going to be? Is it going to be fleets of spaceships? They said, no. It's going to be a series of solar waves of love that are going to penetrate the earth, and everybody will shift up to the next level. Now, that's all the information I had. I thought I was making it up until I talked about it online, and somebody said, no, that's a thing. It's called the solar flash. It's called the event. It's been around since 2012. And sure enough, I looked and I found out, holy crap, people have been talking about this very same thing. I didn't know what it was. That's how I know it's real, because if I had known what it was, then I could say, well, I was imagining it. I was in meditation and I wanted it to be true, so I imagined a higher dimensional being. I'm not perfect. Every single time I get information from higher dimensional beings, there's a part of me that says, I think I made that up, until it's proven otherwise. I'm in a state of shock again, because a couple of weeks ago, some higher dimensional beings showed up, just phased just out of my, my view, and they showed up in my, actually they were outside, they were flying around outside my window. And they, I can feel their presence. It's not just me having a thought. I can feel their presence hitting me. You can believe me or not believe me. I totally won't blame you if you disbelieve me. And the message came, among other things, there was a bunch of messages, but one of them was, we don't want to scare you, but the earth is going to go through some really drastic changes, and the phrase global acts of terror were given to me. That there's going to be a lot of crazy, things happening, and among that there's going to be global acts of terror. And we don't want you to be afraid. Just sit back and watch. Enjoy being human. You're safe. Nothing's going to happen to you. When the time comes, you will know exactly what to do, and something about looking up in the sky and seeing things. I'm getting all this downloaded to me, and it's frightening and strange. But after that, and they even said, if you want to come see us, we're outside. And I went out to the balcony here, and sure enough, there was a ship that signaled to me and then disappeared. And they did that so that I would know I wasn't making it up. I still didn't know what to believe. And 2 weeks later, Maui happened. And I've talked about it on Rumble. And by the way, don't stop with me. I've done just enough research to prove to myself that it is what it is. But one of the most interesting things that has come to light is the phenomenon that apparently anything that was colored blue did not catch on fire. Sitting next to cars, this is the other thing, there are cars that melted, and there are rivers of molten metal on pavement that isn't melted. And you got to wonder how that happens. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I can't tell you. Maybe there are wildfires that are that hot. I don't know. Some people say something else, but That's an interesting one to look at. How is it that things that are blue didn't burn? So go research that. You'll probably have to go to Rumble or other places like that. I got off track here. But yeah, so they told me that this was going to happen. And then on my Rumble video, there's some really interesting things that have happened weather-wise in China. And as we're sitting here right now, the United States is undergoing absolutely unprecedented weather events that have been going on since springtime. Hasn't stopped. Has not stopped. The tornadoes have not stopped. Another one hit today. Tornadoes, floods, as you know, fires all over North America, and there are, questions about how that started. And then Maui, and then within days of Maui, an unprecedented, once-in-a-lifetime hurricane hits Southern California, and on the same day it gets hit with an earthquake. There's just so much going on. Even if we don't ascribe any blame to any one person, we have to stop and say, what is going on here? Is this the apocalypse? Is this the apocalypse that we've heard about? It's starting to sound a lot like the apocalypse we've heard about. So in terms of the rapture, as you can tell now, I've made my case. I am not at all, I don't have an agenda towards that at all. I don't like that idea. I don't like the idea that there could possibly be two Earths, which people have said who believe in this solar flash event. There are people who believe that there will be two Earths. One will be a higher frequency and one will be a lower frequency. And those who operate from love and fearlessness will shift up to a higher frequency Earth, a completely different Earth on a higher frequency. It's the same Earth, but it's a higher frequency. And the way it was explained to me when I asked higher dimensional beings about it, I said, how could this be? Because again, I don't like the idea of the rapture, and I don't like it because I don't like this idea that God comes and saves the people that kiss his ass and everybody else has to die or go through, I don't believe in people going to heaven simply because they believe a certain thing. I don't believe in that kind of cliquish nonsense. I mean, any God who runs the universe that way is an evil God. It's there's just being accepted because you're kissing somebody's ass. That's what it comes down to. And so I don't like that idea. And so when people propose this idea that there's going to be two Earths, a higher dimensional version, 5D version, and a 3D version, that the one that we're on now is going to disappear and it will split into two higher and lower, one higher and one lower. I rejected that idea. In fact, I very self-righteously called people who talked about that, I called them bigots because of my distaste for the whole idea of the rapture. But the more that I continued to communicate with my higher dimensional friends, the more they kept trying to subtly bring that idea to me. The difference is that the choice that is given to people in the rapture is that they have to believe a certain religion and bow down to a certain deity. It's definitely being a member of a club. And that's the choice. Christians will say you have a choice, but it's really not a choice except, whose ass you're going to kiss. And I'm opposed to that kind of nonsense. The choice that comes up in this idea of a higher dimensional versus a lower dimensional Earth is that you're not choosing to do anything you don't want to do. You're not choosing to worship a God and be part of a club. You are choosing to love yourself. Or you're choosing to live in self-devaluation. In other words, you're going to have to choose how you want to live with yourself. So people who are destructive, the psychopaths who are running this world, they actually hate themselves. And if they were able to love themselves, they would stop being abusive. That's, a fact. And so we're abusive to ourselves. And fear and hatred, violence, victim mentality are all lower vibrational states that we choose to live in. I'm not saying that it's easy to choose to come out of that, because in order to vibrate on a frequency of self-love, you will have to face the greatest fear. So understand the fear that's driving psychopaths. If we want to, instead you want to call them evil and all that, that may be true, but the actual truth underneath it is that you have people who are so severely traumatized by abuse. Because you'll never have a healthy person, somebody who grows in a loving family, who loves themselves. They don't someday just wake up and decide to become evil and abusive. That's not how it never works like that. Because if you are somebody who loves themselves and you love others, that is a pleasant experience. And no human ever chooses to do anything that's unpleasant. So if somebody is choosing to live at that level, it means that the only way they know how to survive is to protect themselves from abuse. And when you've been abused to such a degree that your level of self-devaluation is so horrible that to acknowledge how much you hate yourself might even kill you, literally, then the only way that you can survive is you project that out onto other people. This is what serial killers are. Serial killers are acting out on other people the way that they feel they are being treated by the world. And you can't get out of it. But the core of it is lack of self-love. Complete, total, utter, devoid of self-love. So in order to shift up to a higher level, you must have self-love. Now, the interesting thing that happens when you do learn how to love yourself, the first thing that happens is you have to go up against the pain of the awareness that you haven't been loved, that you have been damaged, that you have been hurt. You have to mourn, which is, mourning. When people die and you cry for, in some cultures for 40 days. You weep and lament, wear black clothes and put ash on your head. You do that for 40 days. It's because it's a way of healing yourself of the grief. And if you don't mourn for the fact that you have been traumatized, you will never get to the point where then you will be able to ask for love. You will to open yourself up to being loved by the universe. So psychopaths are people who are incapable of allowing the universe to love them. And the universe is constantly throwing love at you all the time. The universe is constantly sending energy to help you mourn for the damage that has happened to you and then take responsibility and move beyond it. But it's easier to stay safe, to protect yourself with the armor of anger, fear, and projection. That is just a very safe place to be, and it keeps you in a place where you feel you are protected. And let's be clear, the psychopaths who massacre and murder and destroy, these are people who are, the thing that they are afraid of the most is you loving them. So just to give you an example, if somebody abuses you, the most painful thing, if you want to get them back, the most painful thing you can do is be so in love with yourself and so connected to yourself that when they attack you, abuse you, accuse you of things you haven't said or done, instead of getting angry and then calling them names, which is what they want you to do, by the way. When people attack you, what they want is they want you to fight back at them and devalue them, because they're constantly devaluing themselves. The kindest thing you can do is to tell them the truth and say, that's very hurtful. What you've just said is really hurtful because it's not true. I don't feel that way about you. That's not how I interact with the world. And as much as that hurts me, I know that you're only saying this to me because you're in pain. And even though you're in pain, it's not going to stop me from seeing the truth about you, which is that you are a divine, infinite soul. And, usually when you're dealing with an average person, they may be, psychopathic in one little area of their life, but they might be really wonderful in a bunch of other areas. In my case, that happens a lot. My essence kind of brings out, people, they'll attack me, but they're really great to everybody else. And so I can see how wonderful they are as people as long as I step out of the way and I don't allow their abuse to stimulate my insecurities. If I'm secure within myself, I've got nothing to prove. So the most painful thing you can do if you really want to get somebody back is not get them back, not get revenge, but to tell them how beautiful they are. And how much, even though what you're saying is hurtful to me, even though it's not true, it doesn't change the way that I see you. And I know that your potential is unlimited. And even though you're saying this to me, it's not going to change the way I feel about you. Doesn't mean you have to stay with them or hang out with them, but they won't be able to respond to that. That's if you want to get them back. That's the best way to do it. So the choice with the solar flash isn't choosing which god which god's ass you're going to kiss. It is the choice to go through the pain of mourning the trauma you have experienced and choosing to move past it and choosing to be in a place of self-love. You can't be in a place of self-love without loving others. So you can't sit there and say, I'm awakened and I love myself, but every single person in the cabal must be burned alive. You can't say that, because the moment you go into wanting to punish other people, you're now in the same frequency as they are. They've won. Then that's what they want, by the way. They may not know it, but what damaged people want is they want to pull you into their pain so they won't be alone in it. This is the reason why narcissists, psychopaths especially, enjoy inflicting pain on others. Because when they see your pain, it actually allows them to realize that that's how they feel. It gives them an ability to acknowledge how much pain they're in. So that's why they do that to you. It's got nothing to do with you. Because left alone, they start to go crazy. Because they feel this horrific stuff inside of them, and they need to find it. This is a victim mentality. Those of you with a victim mentality who believe that higher dimensional beings of light are tricking you into being reincarnated so they can feed off of your energy, or those of you who believe in reptilians who are doing that, this is your projection. This is how you feel all the time. And so in order to justify this feeling, which is actually not what the universe is doing, the spirit of God, if you want to call it, that is never doing that to you. The universe is constantly seeking to empower you and to love you. So that love and empowerment, though, if you buy into it, will take you out of the pain and out of the misery. And if you've gotten used to that and you believe that's what will keep you safe, then you need to fight against it. So you need to look for things to justify how you feel. That's why you believe that there's such a thing as false beings of light. It's impossibility. Do me a favor. Get a flashlight and try to make a false flashlight. Try to create a flashlight that sends darkness that somehow illuminates your house. You won't be able to do it. It's not possible. There's no such thing as false light. That's crazy talk. Darkness, evil, yeah, but false light, there's no such thing. So if you have that, it means that you are seeking to look for a justification for the pain that you feel. When you interact with beings of light, what they will do is they will send you love. Now, don't get me wrong. That love might end up giving you a traumatic experience. Because what will happen is you will be forced to feel the self-hatred that you have going on inside of you all the time. And your first reaction, as happens with many people who do CE5, the first reaction will be fear. The second one is you'll become paranoid. And you'll start making assumptions about what these beings are doing to you that aren't true. You'll believe that they're trying to lie to you or that they're evil, or, but what's happening is that you're just afraid of love. You're literally deathly afraid of being loved. So this is a long way of saying that the choice that you'll experience with the solar flash is you will have to choose the path of self-love and self-acceptance, which will also mean simultaneously love and acceptance of others. Now, I've been alive long enough to see that people oftentimes choose, in their pain, they choose to stay in a lower vibrational state. People who choose to stay addicted to drugs and alcohol. People who choose to seek out abusive relationships. People who choose to stay poor, who choose to stay miserable, who choose to stay resentful. They choose to do that because they understand it, it's comfortable, and it's safe because it's familiar. And I've seen people do that without a solar flash. I've seen people, stay homeless even though they could get free money from the government. I've seen people choose to stay in abusive relationships. I've seen people seek them out when they have the opportunity to, go to therapy or go to 12-step groups and heal. They choose not to do that. So I'm not unaware of the possibility that if there are two Earths that are coming as a result of this flash, that this solar flash, when it hits, it's going to take the Earth that we're in and, like a prism, split it into two vibrations, two frequencies. And the frequency you end up at will be the frequency you choose. And if you choose that, like many people do, then that's where you'll be. My experience for myself, I can't speak for everybody else. Perhaps for animals and little kids, it's different. Maybe this is a natural thing. They get hit with this energy and they will just naturally go up without any effort. But for me, when I get hit with this energy, I have to stop and I have to choose. I have to choose to face the pain of the love I've never gotten. I have to choose to face the pain of the trauma that I haven't yet looked at within myself. And I have to choose to love and forgive others. I have to make those choices every time I'm hit with these higher dimensional energies. I can't speak for you. Maybe you're less damaged than I am. If you're on my channel, probably you've got some trauma, otherwise you wouldn't end up here. People who end up on my channel usually need some healing. So I can accept that. What has come to me recently, it's happened a couple of times now, when higher dimensional beings have come, they've come with messages that the time is almost here. As I say it, I can feel the energy within me. Time is almost here. And we just want to let you know, don't be worried, but we're almost at that point where the shift is going to happen. But then I've been told things like, or I've interpreted things like, you will shift and people will think you have died. What? You will shift and you'll rise up into the atmosphere. You'll fly into the atmosphere physically. What? That's not how I imagined it when they first told me solar waves of love that hit the earth and people will shift up. I didn't take it literally. I didn't think I would literally shift up. I'd leave like Superman, fly off the surface of the planet. And let me be clear, I'm not comfortable with any of that. That's frightening to me. It's very hard to believe and it's frightening. So when I get that, and I can't help but make the comparison between that and the Christian rapture. There's only a few verses that talk about it, and one is that when Jesus comes again, which again, they told me that there's going to be an event that people will think is the second coming of Jesus. And the Bible says when Jesus comes again, his believers will be caught up in the air with him. There's another verse in Matthew where it says, two people will be standing next to each other, and one will be taken and one will be left. When you look at this, it sounds a hell of a lot like what they're telling me. Now, the truth is those verses really they're really out of left field. And they don't really connect to any Christian or Jewish religious traditions. They're just these weird out of left field things that we don't even know why they're there. But, born again Christians, because they take the Bible literally, said, well, it says it in that verse, so it must be real. Therefore, there's this thing called the rapture. So even though I don't believe in Christianity in any form at all, it doesn't mean that they couldn't have intuited something accurate. The book of Revelation, although all the symbolism, whatever, the idea of what we're seeing now, this looks like we're going into an apocalypse. When you've got natural disasters that don't look all that natural, and you have things happening, where President Biden gives in one day, I think in one day gives $25 billion to a foreign country to fight their own war, but only gives $700 per family of the people who were displaced by the Maui fires. That comes out to be like $1 million as opposed to $25 billion. When you live in that kind of a world, something is wrong. Something ain't right. And, prophecies of, floods and fires and famines and pestilence, we're living it. We're living all of those things. So if those are supposed to be that's heralding the second coming, heralding the rapture, I can't deny the similarity of it. I also can't deny the similarity of other religious prophecies like Ragnarok, the completely, totally non-Christian, indigenous, pre-Christian European belief of Ragnarok. Same, you go and read that myth as well. You're going to hear very similar things. And like Christianity, Ragnarok doesn't talk about a rapture. But when the world has destroyed itself, a new world arises. And on this new world, of course, there's no pain, all the things, heaven on earth, same kind of stuff that the New Testament talks about. And also, like the New Testament, talks about the return of a divine king. That I don't have anything to say about that, but I'm just asking questions. Once I experienced the Mandela effect and saw that history was literally changing, that there was no such thing as history anymore. Not that people were rewriting history, but that history itself was actually changing. I knew that the reality we lived in was an illusion, that this whole thing's an illusion. So, if those things can happen, then there's no reason why light can hit the earth and have it split into two frequencies and one be 5D and one be 3D. There's nothing now in my experience that says that's impossible, because I'm coming to find out. The only thing that's impossible is for the universe to be predatory, for the universe to be evil. For it is impossible for higher dimensional beings to be evil. And the only reason I know that is because I've experienced it. And people, those of you who ask, people always ask, isn't it possible that both things could be true, that there are evil 5D beings and good 5D beings? Well, if you've never experienced the fifth dimension, then you can ask that kind of hypothetical question. But once you've been there, and I have, once you've intimately interacted with those beings, you know that it's impossible for a higher dimensional being to have a lower dimensional mindset, because hatred, predatory aspects, feeding off of other people, hurting other people, devaluing other people, hating yourself, those are only lower dimensional emotional states. And you know that a higher dimensional being won't do that, simply because if they did, they would immediately shift out of that and fall into a lower state. And once you're in a higher dimensional state, by the way, if you want to start talking about demons, I used to be an exorcist, demons do exist. If you want to start telling me, well, demons exist, so therefore, well, but they can't get to higher dimensions. And even if you're a Christian, they fall. They fell out of heaven. They fell out of heaven because if it's possible for a fifth dimensional being to all of a sudden become a narcissist, that vibration they'll fall out of that dimension. They immediately become a lower dimensional being. So it's impossible for higher dimensional beings to have anything but love for you. And if you don't believe me, then I encourage you to do it yourself. Go do CE5 or do the free guided interdimensional meditations I have on my channel. Go to my channel page, thunderwizard.com, DOTCOM, on YouTube, and spend the 5 seconds to click on the playlists and go to the free guided interdimensional meditations and do it yourself. And if you're able to get past your own 3D barrier, when you experience those beings, you'll know what I'm talking about. You'll know how powerful they are. You'll know how shocking it is to your third dimensional mind, and you'll know that they have nothing but love for you. And they have love on a level you've never experienced before. And that's just normal for them. That's just what it's like there. So don't take my word for anything. So before we go any further, listening to me talk is almost a waste of time. The whole point of this channel is to give you techniques. So here's another truth. So I've already given you the truth that we must choose, and all of our states, our self states, are chosen. Their responses in our childhood, we respond to the stimulus that we're given, and our experiences that we feel trapped, which is why many people never evolve, because they don't feel they can. The one thing that's missing when I run into people, when it's presented to them that their actions and interactions with other people is harmful to them, and everybody has the answer. Well, what you need to do is this. What you need to do is that. Even though those people who say that can do that, those people who are in that pain don't have the ability to do those things that seem so normal to us. But the one thing that's true is when they say, I can't change. I can't stop smoking crack. I can't stop dating abusive women. I can't stop. That's true, that's their experience. But what's missing is they don't stop and go, okay, I can't within myself. Is there something I can do? And they don't ask the question, what can I do? And when somebody asks the questions, what can I do to change? Then opportunities will arise. There's no shortage of 12-step groups. There's no shortage of free counseling. There's no shortage of meditative practices on my channel. There's no shortage of free as well as the stuff you get on the subscription pages. There's no shortage of answers to your question of how do I change? But the question is, will you ask that question? Will you ask, what can I do differently? What I'm doing isn't working and I can't stop. I can't. Do you have difficulty getting out of your victim mentality. Stop blaming yourself. You can't help it. Are you abusive to other people and you can't stop doing that? Don't blame yourself. You can't help it. Now ask, how can I get out of it? How can I do something different? I ran into this, just a couple days ago. I was, I won't get into the personal drama of it all, but I was having some really painful difficulty with some people in my life, and I couldn't escape the pain, and my only option was to just leave. And the thought came to me that, you know what, my higher dimensional friends have never once judged me for things they could. They've only loved me, even in the times when I pushed them away because they're frightening to me or it's too much. They've never once judged me or said anything negative to me. And these people I'm experiencing are doing some hurtful things to me because literally my essence is frightening to them. My vibration, my frequency is literally frightening to them because they would, in order to stay in my presence, they would have to shift up. And so they're attacking me because they don't want to do that. And so I realized that I couldn't stay in that for my own health because it was becoming really toxic to me, and I couldn't avoid being damaged by it. And I thought about my friends. And then I said, they're able to do that with me, and they haven't walked away from me no matter how crotchety I get with them. And so I said, teach me how to do what you do. How do you keep seeing the divinity in me even when I struggle against you? And I didn't, the skies didn't open, and I didn't have a angelic choir come down and touch me on the head. Nothing happened, but within a couple of hours, all of a sudden, I was literally bulletproof against other people's projections onto me. And I was able to literally see the beauty in them. They're not horrible people just because in this one area they're really uncomfortable. And they're acting out, destructively because they're being stimulated in an uncomfortable way. It doesn't change the fact that they're infinite, beautiful beings. And I don't know how it happened, but I got what I asked for. So that's what everybody needs to do. When the shift hits, you have to ask yourself, am I willing to do something different? Am I willing to think different? Am I willing to be different? And if you can't change, then you need some type of method to change. And that's what this channel is all about. So go onto the YouTube channel page and go to the playlists and look for whatever you're looking for. Energy work, meditation, interdimensional meditation. If you don't know where to start and you don't know what to do, that's what the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong is all about. I tell you step by step exactly what to do. You don't have to figure it out. You can go and you subscribe, thunderwizard.com, Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong, and on the channel page you will see, where is it? It's got to be here somewhere. On the, come on, I know you're right here somewhere. Anyway, I'm not seeing it. I know it's right in front of me. All right, I'm not seeing it. When you go to the Patreon page, you will see little boxes. They'll say 90-day challenge or lightning qigong. Once you've subscribed, click on those boxes and you'll see all of the appropriate videos. After you've done that, you can scour the rest of the hundreds, if not thousands of hours of exclusive videos on that, on the Patreon for other stuff. But I guarantee you, if you do the lightning qigong every day, consistently, I guarantee you, you will begin to shift. You will manually be shifting your vibration up. Your consciousness will follow, which means normally what happens is people's consciousness change and then their energy shifts. If you are somebody that you can't make the consciousness change, then you can do it backwards. You can do the energy shift in the body, and then the consciousness will follow. You will have to face things. You will have to go through perhaps some challenging emotions, but you will have an energy practice that will feel so good and so empowering that feeling good will be more important than, it'll be more powerful than the pain that you go through to evolve. And that's the beauty of it. So go to thunderwizard.com, subscribe. And if you don't like it, you can unsubscribe. You got nothing to lose. It's the same amount of money you'd pay for a video game or a bag of weed or whatever it is you do to make yourself feel better. You know, and here's the thing. I got to tell you, anybody who says I don't have the money, if I'm right and my interpretation of these messages are right, we might only have a couple more months on this planet. And when I look at it that way, you know, inconveniencing yourself, paying some money for something that might actually save your life, I think it's worth the investment. You got nothing to lose. So please don't use that. But even if you do, don't let it stop you from doing the free practices. There's some, I would say probably 10 times more free practices on my channel than there are the paid stuff, at least. Might even be something like 20 times more free stuff, maybe even more than that. So don't let it stop you. And get my books. The 3 books I recommend are Interdimensional Revolution, Extraterrestrials Are Coming to Earth, and The Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life. The book, The Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life, is actually how people will live in the 5th dimension without even thinking about it. So if you get that book and master what's in that book, you're guaranteed to shift up. Don't treat it like a book, read it once and put it down. Treat it like the Bible. Read a verse every day. Get it in there and make it part of your life. And if you do what I tell you to do in that book, I guarantee you access to 5D, and I guarantee you a shift. And if you don't believe me, then I challenge you to prove me wrong. And the only way you can prove me wrong is if you actually do it. If you do it every day, and you know, if we have a year, you can come back a year later and say, I did it every day for a year and I'm worse off than I was, and I'll be the first to take my hair off to you and apologize. Nobody's ever done that yet. Courses.thunderwizard.com, all of the services that are available. And you can get my books. You see it here. Get my books at michaelwilliamdenny.com. Also, I am uploading stuff on Rumble. You can find me on Rumble, Thunderwizard on Rumble. I think I've done all of that. So I'm only taking questions nowadays from people who are subscribed to the 90-day challenge, and I have to recognize you. And the reason for that is the majority of questions that come from people that aren't doing the work, the questions are usually not relevant, and I end up responding in ways that I don't like. So I've just decided to only deal with the students who have intelligent questions to ask. And if you don't have intelligent questions to ask, it just means not that you're not intelligent, it just means that you haven't done the practices enough to have relevant questions for me. Okay, so that's it. All right, what else? All right, so somebody here says they've been doing the 90-day challenge, so that means I have to assume, I don't recognize you, I have to assume that you're telling me the truth. So you say, I've been doing the 90-day warrior program, and I've noticed that a few hours after doing it that my chest and back gets super hot and feels like my entire body is on fire. Is it normal? You know, that question, is it normal? Why do you want to be normal? Do you need to be like everybody else? What if your experience is unique? What's wrong with being unique? It's not uncommon. I'm going to say that. All you're talking about is that you're now experiencing in your physical body what you've read about or heard about in books. You've heard about chakras. You've heard about energy meridians. You've heard about these things, and you hear, if you do any research, Tai Chi guy will say, well, when you do this movement, it opens up this meridian here and the chi flows in, and it's just a bunch of nonsense in your head until you can feel it. Oh my God, I feel all this energy going through right that same little spot he talked about. So all you're saying is that your meridians are opening up, which you're telling me that I'm telling the truth. You do this. This is the most powerful energy practice in history. If you do it, your meridians are going to open up. So all of that you're feeling is, heat and blood flow is just a response to chi. Where the chi goes, the blood flow and heat follows. So it just means that those things are opening up. You can go ahead and feeling super hot, that'll change. It means it's burning off toxins. When your body gets used to it, it'll no longer feel that way. It'll be just a warmth. It'll be a pleasant, warm feeling. You'll feel yourself being expansive and relaxed. So this is good. Yes, it is. It is not uncommon in the first stages of energy work to have energy meridians open up and to feel heat and blood flow in those areas. All right. I don't see anything else here. So I guess that's it. We're done. You guys, that's it. That's all I got for today. I'm just, I got to tell you, the messages that how can I say this? I can usually tell when somebody is projecting their own unconscious fantasies. I'm not a channeler for that reason. I don't believe channels, I just don't believe people who channel are channeling anything other than their own unconscious narcissism. I've never once experienced a channeler do that. There are people who portray themselves as channels who I believe are giving really good advice, but they're doing it, under the guise of channeling. But it's just their own advice, and they do, I'm not a prophet. I'm not a psychic. So when I do these interdimensional meditations and I have these, what I experience as telepathic communications, and they're not bolstering my narcissism and my ego, and they're difficult and challenging to hear, so far, those have turned out to be the most true. And the latest ones are that the Earth is going to split into two. In fact, the split has already begun. And that for a period of time, there might be a connection where people, can go back and forth between 3 and 5D. And then at some point, the split will be complete and you'll be wherever you've chosen to be. That the lower version of 3D is going to be less colorful. It's going to be even worse than this one. And the higher dimensional, the colors are going to be different, and it's going to be, you won't have I don't know what negativity, what limitations there are in 5D, but you won't have any of the stuff that we're seeing now that we associate with 3D. And I believe that not because it's a comfortable thought. It's not a comfortable thought. What I want everybody to shift up. Apparently that's not going to happen. I don't like that. I'm frightened of the thought of me launching into the atmosphere like Superman. That doesn't sound like fun. On paper it sounds like fun, but when I really think about that coming, that one day I'm going to share one last story which I include here because, again, if enough people are having this intuitive experience, even though they're not 100% right in their interpretation, and especially if they're from battling religions that battle each other, I'm going to pay attention because it means that it's an intuition that's coming to everybody's unconscious mind. And this is somebody who had a near-death experience, died, and the way she describes it, she went to heaven. Now, as I said, I don't believe in Jesus, but that doesn't mean that when people die, they don't experience Jesus coming to them. It doesn't mean that it's Jesus. It means that their mind is creating a symbol that they can look to as God, as their higher self. If you're Buddhist, it's going to be Buddha. If you're a Hare Krishna, it's going to be Krishna. If you're a Christian, it's going to be Jesus. And what's interesting is that if you're somebody who believes that Jesus has blue eyes and blonde hair, when you die, Jesus is going to have blue eyes and blonde hair. Even though that is absolutely would have been impossible if there really was a Jesus. If Jesus did exist, I guarantee you he had brown eyes and olive skin and dark curly hair. It was not blonde hair and blue-eyed. Guaranteed. So this woman has a near-death experience, and she sees Jesus. Actually, she never saw him. She felt him. And she talks about how Jesus showed her all of these things. And one of the things that Jesus showed her was that the Bible was wrong, that there's no such thing as hell, that there is no such thing as punishment. And she realized that religion was wrong, and she learned it from Jesus himself. And then she had this vision where she was floating out over the earth. And she could see all of the pain and hear all of the pain. In fact, I know that's the exact same experience I had when I had a out-of-body experience when I was 7, and I went up out of the atmosphere. As I'm coming up out of Earth's atmosphere, I was bombarded with all of the thoughts and the intense fears and the pain and everybody's self-talk, and it was just like the cacophony was overwhelming until I burst out of Earth's atmosphere, and then I felt this peace. And she describes that exact thing, which is why I believe it might be real, because my experience was the same. And she said she's looking down at Earth and she can hear and feel all of the pain and everything, and God or Jesus is telling her, that something about heaven, and she could feel behind her that heaven was behind her. And what was interesting is that she had thought heaven was just sort of this place. And she saw on earth, she saw these people choosing love. And as they chose love, they would shoot past her like some kind of lightning bolt. And so all of these people are whizzing past her as they're going to where she knows heaven is. And then, and to her, God was very sad because so many people were choosing to stay in this hell. And she's like saying, no, God, look at all these people choosing. And then God or Jesus says to her, yeah, but look at all the people that are staying behind. And then she saw that people who stayed behind were wrapped up in the fear and everything that I talked about. And then she turned around to see what heaven was. And she turned around expecting to see like this place, like a dimension. And what she saw was a planet. And she said, I wasn't expecting heaven to be a planet. Now, this is somebody long before, stuff that's going on now. She's not talking about the solar flash. She's not talking about extraterrestrials. She's not talking about any of the stuff that now everybody's talking about. But she described what I'm being told, or at least what I interpret to be, I am being told is going to happen. That when this happens, when people actually shift up, they make the choice within themselves to go to that higher frequency, they're like Superman. They're going to fly off the planet and land on the new planet. Hey, don't get mad at me. I'm just reporting what I heard. And apparently there will be a time when the door will close and people will have made their choice, whatever that is. And so I think the solar flash event is sort of like it's a boost. Those of us, I'm including myself, I'm working hard to make that shift, but I'm clearly still here on 3D Earth. I don't know if by myself I could make that shift to go to that high of a frequency. I'm going to need an energetic boost. And when the flash comes, it's going to be the boost that will allow people to make the shift, to make the choice within themselves, to go beyond their limitation and to choose to vibrate at that higher place of love and freedom. They'll go through a death experience perhaps, and then they'll launch like Superman through the clouds and end up on a new planet, which is the same planet, just a higher frequency. And having said all of that, I'm perfectly comfortable if I'm wrong about all of it. I am not attached to any of it. I'm just reporting to you what I've seen and what I believe. That's it. Okay. That's all I got, but you guys know what to do. Links are there. Make use of them. I wish you all the best. I love you all. Thank you all for listening. And thank all of you who are doing the work. Every single one of you who's doing the meditations and doing the hul breath, the huar breath, doing any of the free meditations, especially all of those of you who are subscribed. You're really committed to this and you're doing the work. I'm going to shut up with this one last thing. Every person that I work with who is currently doing the interdimensional meditations and doing the practices, every single one of them that is doing it on a daily basis, especially the interdimensional meditation, they are transforming. They are completely different people. They're not the same just what they were months ago. And I tell each and every one of them how grateful I am that they're doing the work, because when they empower themselves, I'm empowered. Because you can't improve yourself without improving all other conscious beings in the universe. And I'm telling you, this isn't just talk. If you do the work, the changes will come. So I encourage you, whatever path you take, we may not be here longer than September. Maybe in October I'll say I was wrong about that, but we might all shift. You might show up on the channel and I won't be here. So, get what you can, but do the work and don't deny yourself anything. These might be the last couple of months we have on this version of Earth. All right, that's it. I love you all. I wish you all the best, and I will see you all next time.